talk, you'll need to push this button.
Okay.
Okay, but y'all can just take turns talking about how you got started.
Sure. Okay, I'll go ahead and start.
Debbie, you started before I did.
I'm the old timer, so I'll go ahead. I'm originally from a small town in upstate New York called Glens Falls. And my main pursuit in life was football back then. And I was lucky enough to be highly recruited out of Glens Falls to many different universities, Ohio State, Penn State. But I ended up playing my college football for Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. And I met Fritz von Erich when I was in Dallas, and he suggested become a pro wrestler. And I was still focused on professional football quite a bit at that time, so I kind of blew him off. And I went in and played 2 years in pro ball, one with the Atlanta Falcons and one up in Canada with the Toronto Argonauts. Realized as an offensive guard I had no long-term future in football. I gave Fritz von Erich a call, and he gave me the gift of opening up the door to professional wrestling, because back then professional wrestling was very closed. And now there's a lot of wrestlers. Back then, if you didn't have a relative in wrestling, you didn't get in. So it was quite a gift for Fritz to open up the door, and 40 years later, it's been a great business for me.
For myself, yeah, growing up as a kid, just first of all, wrestling wasn't, our way out. It wasn't, the way that we looked. It was, basketball, football, rapping, or something like that. So wrestling was definitely not something that was on my radar. I never dreamed one day of being a professional wrestler. I remember watching Hacksaw Duggan on television, when I was a teenager.
He was heckling you.
No, and I remember I loved it. I mean, I loved it so much. I didn't miss a Saturday, Paul Bosch wrestling match. But there again, never dreamed of doing it or anything like that. I was a kid also that, just say for instance, I was never asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? So I never thought about being, anything until I was 25 years old, and my brother asked me if I wanted to try professional wrestling. And I didn't have the money to do it, but a guy that I was working for, he sponsored me to go to the wrestling school. It was $3,000. And the first time I got in the wrestling ring, for me it felt like deja vu. It seemed like a place that I had been, somewhere before in my lifetime. It seemed like it was just something that was just meant for me to do, as well as, there again, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and when I found it, I hung on to it, and I hung on to it for dear life. And for the last 30 years, I've been a part of the wrestling business, and now I'm getting a chance to produce the next generation of professional wrestling, with my wrestling school and my promotion, Reality Wrestling.
So a lot of what you do is performance. I mean, there's a lot of performance, like acting going on. But how much of it is physicality of it, and what do people need to know about the wrestling that maybe they don't realize when they're just watching it on TV?
I think a lot of misconceptions about wrestling, we do a lot of charity work with the NFL guys, and they always strut around like, well, we're world champions. I'm like, well, where in the world do you fellas go? Professional wrestling, we go all over the world. Myself, I wrestled in every state in the Union, every province in Canada, in 30 different countries. It's amazing the appeal of wrestling around the world. I joke, I said, nobody knows Tom Brady down at Christchurch. They'll go, ho! But a lot of folks don't realize wrestling as a business. A lot of kids say, hey, I want to be a wrestler. I said, well, chase your dreams, because you never know. A guy like Daniel Bryan, I never thought he would make it. But there's a kid that had the desire to do it, and he did. But if you look at it as a business, there's 1,500 NFL football players playing this year. There's 600 NBA basketball players playing this year. There's 100 WWE wrestlers. It's a television show. It's much more competitive than sports. A lot of people say, well, you guys are all good friends, aren't you? I said, yeah, we all compete for the same money. We're real good friends. It's big business. It's a cutthroat business. It's a tough business, but it's been a great business for me.
As well as, from the outside looking in, one might perceive, we are just, actors, putting on boots and tights and going out there and, playing a game. But every time we walk out to the ring, it can be our last time actually doing it. And wrestlers, the ones that make it to the top level, the guys like Hacksaw, Duggan, those guys made it real for the fan that was watching it. They became, you know, part of that show, and that's what I think the really gifted wrestlers go out there and make the fans, you know, almost, you know, take that that moment and make it something, you know, totally theirs. For me, I always, you know, thought wrestling was real. No, I'm not saying that as, you know, watching professional wrestling and thinking the stories that they're doing are real or anything like that. But for me, every time I put my boots on and went out to that ring and I had an opponent, I wanted that moment to be as real as I possibly could. And there was no love lost. Sometimes, you know, a guy might get a busted lip, you know what I mean? He might get a hard shot, but, you know, that's just part of going out there and making it real. And I think that's the lost art, a lot of that we see today, compared to, like I said, watching Hacksaw Duggan on television back in the day. They made it real to us, even though we knew what wrestling was.
So who were your mentors in wrestling as you were coming in?
Mine was Bruiser Brody, one of the well-named guys in professional wrestling. He was probably, to this day, I think, one of the best big men in our business. He was a giant of a guy, and he was very physical, and he was tragically killed in Puerto Rico by another wrestler, but he was a huge influence on my career.
For me, there again, I came from the neighborhood. I didn't have a whole lot of influences, you know, that I wanted to be like in professional wrestling, but there was those guys who laid the foundation before I came, like Junkyard Dog, who was such a big star, you know, in the South. You know, I mean, he was huge. Not only just in the South, but in, you know, in New Orleans area, Louisiana. I mean, no one was bigger than the JYD, and then I got a chance to see him, you know, JYD in a cartoon, and I'm like, this is huge, you know what I mean? That's what I want to be like. So watching guys like that and guys like Ron Simmons, those are the wrestlers, but for me it was Muhammad Ali, a guy who, you know, broke all the barriers, you know, everything they put up in front of him, he was willing to, you know, take it, you know, right on the chin, and watch how, you know, graceful he became later on in his life was something that was amazing as well. So yeah, Muhammad Ali.
That's a good one. Can you share details of your most memorable matches?
Yes, for me, it's easy, you know, the biggest feather in my cap, because I joke, you know, I was never world champion, I was never intercontinental champion, I was never tag team champion. I was lucky to win a match, I'll tell you. But I won the first ever Royal Rumble, which most wrestling folks remember, but that wasn't the biggest moment in my life, you know, in wrestling. I'm from a small town in upstate New York, way up by the Vermont border, and my dad would bring me and my sisters down to New York City as kids to watch the circus at Madison Square Garden. So you can only imagine as an adult driving to Madison Square Garden and look at the marquee and see Hacksaw Duggan versus Andre the Giant. You know, it was a double whammy to be main event at Madison Square Garden, but to be in there with Andre the Giant, you know, it's a whole other deal. And no matter what profession you're in, the arts or music, you sell out the Garden, you sell out the Garden. We had 22,000 people. Andre sold the Garden out, I was there with him.
For me, I've had a lot of great moments in professional wrestling. How, I really don't know. But the most memorable actually happened well before I ever, you know, made it to the big time or anything like that. And it was my brother and I, and we were wrestling for the Global Tag Team Championship. And I think what made that night so memorable was because all of my family members were there. And it was the first time they ever got a chance to see me actually in the ring do something like this. Me being the kid that got in so much trouble when I was a little kid, and now they see me in the ring doing this, and we won the tag team championship that night. I remember my aunt, she looked just like my mother, and she cried from the beginning of the show to the end, you know, and that night, it was just such a special night. I think, you know, even though I've had so many great moments, championship moments, that night was bigger than all of them.
Have you had any matches where you just kind of go gulp? I'm worried about, you know, fighting this guy, or are there some that you just have like a sense of dread about because you know it's going to be bad?
That happens a lot on the small independent shows. Especially when you've been wrestling for many years and you're done with the big companies, you're doing the smaller shows, and you're like, Hacksaw, here's the guy you're going to wrestle. And he's 6'5", 300 pounds, and 25 years old. You know, he's like, Mr. Duggan, are we on TV tonight? I hope not, kid. I tell you. So usually, though, once you get to the level of WWE or F and WCW, you're pretty well. You're the best in the world at what you do. So everybody's pretty good at that level. But folks go, Hacksaw, I saw you throw a punch. You missed a guy by that much. I said, yeah, but you see, when I hit him by that much, it goes both ways. So it is a physical business.
No, I mean, I don't know. I don't remember too many moments like that. I've had some scary moments though in the ring. Just say, for instance, I remember working with this guy named Mike Austin. He's passed away now, God rest his soul. Mike Austin, he worked in a company called ECW, called Extreme Championship Wrestling. And when you watch the show, you know, it looked like these guys were, you know, pretty okay workers. And then I had the opportunity and the chance to work with him, and I go, wait a minute, this guy can't work. You know? And he put me in this move, it's called like the Razor's Edge. If you guys remember what the Razor's Edge looked like. And he ran all the way across the ring with me, and the only thing that saved me was a big trun where I could actually see myself running across the ring, and he launched me, and I landed so hard, it's literally like a car crash, and I slid all the way up under the turnbuckle, and I barely missed my head from hitting the bottom turnbuckle by that much. And that's what I say, you know, that could have been the end of my career. I was out of work for 2 months because of that injury, that neck injury, and it could have been a lot longer.
Well, I'm sure you've had a whole lot of injuries in your career.
No, actually I haven't.
Really?
You know, actually I wrestled for 20 plus years active, and the only thing that I ever had to have surgery for was I had my knee scoped twice.
Well, you're blessed.
And that was it, I'm blessed, yeah.
It wasn't the same for you, right, Hacksaw?
No. Yeah, I'm pretty broke up. 11 overall surgeries, 4 knees, shoulder. Joint injuries are major. You know, you got 2 big guys out there, and you're in front of thousands, if not millions, of people on TV. So you're pretty excited. Everything's pretty live. You're flying around. So knees, elbows, ankles, shoulders, they get hurt unintentionally a lot of times. And just like any other job, you know, you don't get along with everybody you work with. Neither do I. And sometimes you're in the ring with somebody you don't get along with. But usually the match is not very good. If I'm in there with Booker and we're working together and Booker potatoes me, I know it's not intentional, it's a miss, and that happens. You know, but if it was Buzz Sawyer and he hit me, I hit Buzz back. And it escalated a little bit. So it's always good to work with somebody you know and trust.
What is your advice that you would give to young people coming up if they're considering this as a career?
Take up golf. A lot easier on the body and a whole bunch more money. 4.
Yeah, I tell them preparation. I got a school in Houston, and I always tell them preparation is the only luck that they're ever going to have. I don't think they're going to slip on a banana peel and find themselves in the main event of WrestleMania. You know that you got to work just as hard as they got us, and cross structure. It's those little small, little bitty things that I try to tell my wrestlers catapult them to the next level.
Because there's no set formula what it would take to make it. It's not like in football where you run a 4 flat 40 and you got a 38-inch vertical jump and bench press 500 pounds. You got a chance to make it. It doesn't have that kind of perimeter.
Parameters?
Thank you. In wrestling, whatever works. Who would have thought a 2x4 would work?
Can't judge a book by its cover.
Let's see. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Spent a lot of time in the gym.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Oh, someone wanted to know if you spend a lot of time in the gym.
Nowadays?
Nowadays?
No. Back in the day, yes. Obviously, you work in a pair of short shorts and patent leather boots.
All day long.
Yeah. And fans can be brutal.
Yeah.
So yeah, you want to spend your time in the gym. Of course, you also want to get picking somebody up and slamming them down. It's a physical business. You need to be strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell my young guys that as well. I don't teach guys how to work out. You know, that's on you. You know, but you got to know it's something that you got to have. You got to have the full package when you're out there. And you don't have to look like a bodybuilder or anything like that, but you definitely have to be in shape. For me, I'm still in the gym now. I'm 56 years old. I'm in the gym on a regular basis. I think I did 300 push-ups before I came over here this morning. But I got one more title bout that I'm working towards, and that title bout is you know, walking my 10-year-old daughter down the aisle one day. So you know, I got a saying, you know, I do my part of the work, I ask God to do His part of the work, and we'll meet in the middle.
There you go. You have a question?
So, in the process of y'all wrestling, have you ever almost or have actually broken kayfabe before?
As far as,
Like, say, you know, you're in the middle of a process, you're hitting each other, and something happens, and you get like really hurt, you know, and you break the process, you know, you actually break out of character or whatever.
for me, I always try to stay in character as much as I can, and on television, in front of a crowd, because trust me, a real fight, a real shoot fight looks so much worse than a wrestling match. You know, so you know, and a true professional, that's something that he's going to handle always behind the scenes.
It's
just
you
not
have trouble backstage.
Yeah.
Not in front of the people.
Never in front of the crowd.
So your careers have changed. You're not in the ring so much anymore. Okay, so what are you doing these days?
Well, I'm a host of my radio show and podcast, Hall of Fame. I have a wrestling school, wrestling promotion, reality wrestling. I work for Fox. I work for WWE. I got a bunch of hats that I wear still to this day, and that's the journey of, you know, not thinking about the past, but you know, thinking about the future and what's next. I don't dwell. I don't sit at home and watch, you know, old videotapes of myself in my old matches or anything like that, because I'm just thinking about what's next, as well as there's still so much work yet still to be done.
Myself, I'll be just turned 67, so I'm pretty much retired. I do some Comic-Cons, and before the pandemic, of course, we did a stand-up show. I actually did the stand-up show in 6 different countries around the world. Did it in Australia, New Zealand, England, Northern Ireland, Canada, and America. And we do them at comedy shops, but they're not really comedy. It's wrestling stories. And you talk about wrestling Andre the Giant and traveling with Jake the Snake Roberts. And you get a nice little turnout. And my wife and I, we travel the world and do stand-up.
So do you keep in contact with a lot of those guys?
Not too much. Just recently, we had WrestleMania a few weeks ago in Orlando, or excuse me, Tampa, and everybody was down there. So that was like old home week. Of course, there's not wrestling. It's a tough business. High death rate, high divorce rate, high drug and alcoholism rate. Of course, we lost an awful lot of guys, and that's why I just recently dropped 100 pounds. My doctor was like, Jim, you don't see a lot of old, heavy guys. Okay, Doc. So, yeah, but it was good to get down there in St. Pete and see everybody. I know, Booker, you were busy as could be down there at WrestleMania.
Yeah. And that's the thing, too. You don't want to get the old guys together too often. You know what I mean? I'm serious. They start reminiscing old times, start thinking they can do the same thing they could do back in the day. They got in the bar and drink all night. You know, so that could not be such a great thing.
We pull a hamstring if we get off the couch quick.
It's heavy.
Are y'all amazed to see the number of fans that you still have your fan base following you around? Y'all were a big draw today. I mean, you have people lined up to see you.
It's humbling, actually.
It really is.
I mean, I know sometimes you get an autograph line. Recently, before the pandemic, I was sitting there, there's a real big, tough-looking guy in the line, and he's working his way through the line, and he's eyeballing me pretty hard, you know. I'm checking my security, and finally the guy gets up, he grabs my head, Hacksaw, Duggan! Me and my dad, we used to watch me. It's humbling, man. You get up, give the guy a hug. I mean, you know, 20, 30 years later, to be remembered like that, it's amazing. I've had a great life thanks to the fans, me and my family, so I'm very appreciative.
And for us to have this after our wrestling careers too, it's just not something that we could have ever imagined. It really is. And I get it all the time, you know. I get it all the time, you know, people say, you know, they see somebody come up to me and say, hey man, can I get a picture or get an autograph? And I always sign it. I always, you know, take the photo because I always say that it's not my moment, it's their moment. And I always say when fans, they say, you get tired of that, and I say, when fans stop doing that, that's when I got a problem. You know, so long as fans are doing that, and, you know, appreciating, you know, what we've done, you know, along that journey, it's humbling and it's appreciative at the same time, because we know what the journey was like, you know, and it wasn't a lot of nights, it wasn't a lot of roses, it wasn't, you know, it was a lot of rough nights, a lot of lonely nights, still on the road, you know, in those hotel rooms, you know, by yourself, you know, the family at home.
You know, all your birthdays, holidays,
all of that.
On the road, Christmas, New Year's.
Sometimes Christmas Day, you're in a wrestling ring. So we really appreciate that so much. You guys really, you really don't know, really can't understand.
Sounds like a lot of sacrifice.
It really is.
Yeah, but as most jobs are. I mean, it's a reason they call it work.
We chose it and didn't choose us.
Yeah, to be on the road a lot is hard.
On the road, and it's also a lot of fun too, you know, especially back in the old days. You know, back in the 80s, you know, people try to compare us to a sports team. Our generation, we were more like a rock and roll band. You know, you're in a different city every night, you're in a different country, in front of thousands of people, a lot of drugs, a lot of women, a lot of booze. A lot of people got caught up in that lifestyle, and it's easy to do every night. If you're in the hotel room, I'll go down to the bar, you know, and get into that habit. So a lot of guys got caught in that. Have Jake the Snake Roberts, one of my best friends, struggled forever with drugs. And I can't throw no stones. I was into it too in the 80s, just didn't have an addictive type personality.
So what was the crowning achievement of your career?
Retiring.
Surviving.
Were there any other ones before that?
No, seriously, I'm serious. I'm dead serious. For me, to make it through this journey and get to the end of it and be able to walk away from it and enjoy the fruits of the labor, that's a huge accomplishment.
If you think
You
of
know,
all the
professional
guys,
wrestling.
Macho, I mean, just a list of guys that have gone and have had the opportunity to let it slip through their fingers. And
We lost so many.
yeah.
Who didn't get a chance to tell the fans thank you? I appreciate everything that you've done, you know, for me and my family. We lost so many of those guys, so for me to actually complete the journey, to finish it, that's why I tell young people, you know, like young people in this room right now, you know, I didn't finish high school, okay? And now at 56 years old, I still think about not finishing. Man, I didn't finish, you know? That right there haunts me to literally, it's gonna haunt me forever, to the day I die.
It's not too late.
I got you know, my GED and all that, but still not finishing high school with my class and having to do it many years later the way I did, it's not gratifying at all, you know, and that's something that you just do not want to ever have, you know, in your head, not finishing. So for me to have finished my career, went through it and hung the boots up and told the fans thank you, and still now to be able to enjoy the fruits of the labor and to just take care of my family and be me, that's the biggest accomplishment out of all of it. It really is.
Are y'all both living in Texas, or do you live other places?
I live in South Carolina.
South Carolina?
Yeah, I'm Texas, Houston.
You're Houston,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right, do any of y'all have any questions? Got some?
I was curious, so you kind of, towards the end of your career, was like that 90s Attitude Era was launching. I mean, if you want to correct me, that's okay. I was curious how you kind of felt seeing that happen, that kind of new explosion again.
Yeah, I was just glad to be part of it, brother, because, you know, my main run was with the WWF, where I wrestled Dusty, DiBiase, and Orton. But I also had a run in the WWE where I wrestled Dusty's kid, DiBiase's kid, and Orton's kid. First I beat up the old man, then I beat up the kid. No, but I was just able, especially to come back as an older timer and appreciate what was going on. To pull up to a WWE TV shoot with 15, 18-wheelers out there, buses and limos. I mean, just to appreciate the production that goes into that, the fans. I mean, because when you're a young guy, hey, it's a party, another night at the hotel, let's go, 500-mile drive, you know. As an old timer, I was able to stop and smell the roses and appreciate the company, and still glad to be part of it.
Booker, I just wanted to know, were you planning on opening the kids camp this summer?
Everybody's hyped about kids camp, man. I think we're getting really close to that point. I think we're getting ready to have our first show. We're gonna have 150 fans, and then next month we're gonna bump it up a little bit more just to see where we are. But we gotta pull the trigger sooner or later. Get the kids back in there, because kids camp is my wife's brainchild, and it's something that's been really popular and growing. So definitely keep your eye on the website, and hopefully we'll get it back in there pretty soon.
This is for Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Yeah, brother.
I'm a huge fan.
Well, thank you.
Rudy, my buddy, we've been watching you since Paul Blosh days.
Yeah, right.
Young Gold, in the Coliseum. But we were coming up here today, got in a little late, don't know if you answered it already, but where did you get the name Hacksaw?
Okay, well, I originally started off as Big Jim Duggan, and that didn't work. Then I wore a mask for a while, and I wrestled as a convict, and that didn't work. So then I wore a fur with chains on it, and I tried Wild Man Duggan, and no, that didn't work neither. So actually I was in San Antonio with Bruiser Brody and Buck Robley, and we were sitting around and we said, how about this, how about that, and they came up with Hacksaw, and I tried it, because people say, well, you carry a 2x4, shouldn't you be 2x4 Duggan, not Hacksaw Duggan? I said, it's wrestling, it doesn't have to make sense. But I'll tell you the 2x4 story though, because I carried a 2x4 for quite a while. Back in the old days, it was a totally different business, it wasn't sports entertainment. If you want to try one of the wrestlers, you come up in the ring and you try one of our stuff. So just getting back and forth to the ring was dangerous. And people spit at you, punch you, kick you, and they just had little ropes for barricades. So I'm out in Amarillo, Texas, sitting back in the dressing room, all covered with loogies and bruises from the fans, rethinking my career choice. And Brody comes in, he goes, Duggan, he says, if you carry something to the ring, carry something you can use. Forget those feathered boas and sequin robes. And I looked down, I'm like, well, here's a piece of wood. And I came out yelling, waving that 2x4. It was like parting the Red Sea, then people scattered. I got to the ring, I'm like, this is great. But I joke, I said, one time I got a big splinter in my thumb, great big splinter. And I went, oh! No, wrestling humor.
Does anybody else have any questions? Don't be shy. Amanda, you got any questions? No. Anybody else? Do y'all have anything else that that you would like to add? You want people to know about you?
Just that you find the folks that are critical of professional wrestling have usually never been to a show. I find folks that are critical and say, have you ever been there? Like, no. So check out a show of professional. If it's not a big show, a local show, a regional show, it's a fun night out. You cheer the good guy, you boo the bad guy, or you go sit in a movie for 3 hours like this. If you haven't been to a wrestling show, check one out.
Check my biography out tomorrow night on A&E if you guys get a chance. As well, it's going to be followed by WWE Hidden Treasures. Check that out. See my life story, guys. It wasn't a bed of roses or anything like that. But I always tell people, you just like in Vegas, you sit down at the table and you get a crappy hand. You still got to play that hand. You got to play it to the best of your ability. Sometimes you got to, you got to bluff. You got to do whatever you got to do to actually, make someone think whatever it is you want them to think. So whatever hand you guys have, man, play it. And that's the story that you guys are going to see tomorrow night on the biography. I got just a bad hand, but it worked out for me.
I thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? No? Man, y'all are very good at this, though.
Hey,
Y'all made it easy for me.
that's what it's supposed to
Thank
be.
you, folks. Thank you all very much for coming down.